Welcome, everybody. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. We're so glad that you're able to join us, and we look forward to this evening and hearing from Kim. We expect the event to run about 90 minutes, including a Q&A, but if it runs a little longer and anybody who needs to leave, feel free to do that, but you can listen to the recording afterwards. In a few days, we'll have that available. What we do is we begin with a land acknowledgement, and Melanie Klein has offered to do that tonight. Melanie lives in Ottawa, but she comes from Oakville in Southern Ontario and has been engaged with IFC since about 2008. So she will give the land acknowledgement. Go ahead, Melanie.
So thanks, everybody. It's beautiful to be here with you all this evening. I just wanted to start by saying that a land acknowledgement is not enough for the deep healing and reconciliation required for the past and for the future of the Indigenous peoples and Mother Earth. I'm here in Ottawa, which is built on unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory, stolen through processes inherent through colonization. Today, we would like to particularly acknowledge the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Hanatashnoashni, Lenepawak, and Adawandaran. We acknowledge all the treaties that are specific to this area: the Two-Row Wampum Belt Treaty of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, Silver Covenant Chain, the beaver hunting grounds of the Haudenosaunee NAN-FAN Treaty of 1701, the McPhee Treaty of 1790, the London Township Treaty of 1796, the Huron Tract Treaty of 1827, the Aninashibek and the Dish with One Spoon Covenant Wampum of the Aninashibek and Haudenosaunee. The land continues to be home to diverse Indigenous peoples, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. The three Indigenous nations that are neighbors to London are the Chippewas of the Tames First Nation, Onetanaga Nation of the Tames, people of the Standing Stone, and the Munsee Delaware Nation, who all continue to live as sovereign nations with individual and unique languages, cultures, and customs. We recognize they are the contemporary stewards of the land and vital contributors to society. We hold all that is in the natural world in our highest esteem and give honor to the wonderment of all things within creation. We offer this land acknowledgement as a first step towards healing, understanding, and bringing together of the various peoples and cultures of this land to all our relations. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. So we're glad to have Kimberley Joy here. Kimberley Joy began life on Anatahaga of the Thames. One of the things that I want to do in reconciliation is learn how to pronounce these names. But Anatahaga is part of the Six Nations Iroquois Confederacy in Southern Ontario. It means people of the Standing Stone. And Kim's Indigenous name is Go We Knit, which means putting things in place. Kim had 6 children, but sadly lost one at an early age. She has overcome much trauma, abuse, and negative effects in her life to become a strong believer in the Creator and a true role model for her family. She was in residential school from junior kindergarten at the age of about 4 until she was around 12 years old. After that, she was placed in the Sixties Scoop until she reached the age of 18. For those that don't know so much about the Sixties Scoop, it was a period in which a series of policies were enacted in Canada that enabled child welfare authorities to take or scoop up Indigenous children from their families and communities for placement in foster homes, from which they would be adopted by white families. Despite its name, the Sixties Scoop began in the mid to late 50s and persisted until the 1980s. It's estimated that a total of 20,000 Indigenous children were taken from their families and fostered or adopted out primarily to white middle-class families as part of the 60s Scoop. So now, Kim, thank you for being ready to share your story. And I think you want to show us something first. Oh, you're muted.
Okay, what would you like to see first? Would you like to see how we smudge?
Yes, please.
Okay. So here I have our cedar that we use, and this is the shell that we use to put them in. What we do is we light the end here, we let it smolder, it burns and smokes from here. And what we do is we acknowledge to the creator why we're doing our smudges. And one of the things that we do for our smudging is we smudge our eyes so that we see good in everything. So we put the smoke over our eyes. We smudge our mouth so that we speak the good words. We smudge our ears so that we can hear all the messages that are supposed to be sent to us from the Creator. We smudge our hearts to be forgiving and kind. We smudge our legs to walk a good path. And we also smudge our hands to do good work. And we smudge our backs because the Creator always has our back. He's always with us. And that's how we smudge and what we bless for. And I've taught myself, my children, and my grandchildren. I have, like I say, I have 5 children, their spouses, and 13 grandchildren. So I keep rather busy.
And who gave you that training? Where did you learn it from?
I learned that from my dodo. That would be my grandfather. They call him dodo.
Mm-hmm.
All our grandmother's dodo lady, because she's our dodos. That's what we called them, is our dodos. And they were the ones after I had gotten out of the 60 Scoop. And I more or less spent a lot of time with them. And they taught me a lot of things that I know to this day. They told me about, I went to Longhouse with them. I got my Indian name. My Indian name is, like I say, Gawinit. And they showed me that. I got my kids all Indian names as well. We put them all through Longhouse, which is very sacred to us. It's all held by the elders, and the names come from a person that has passed in their family recently, or they carry on that name. So we all carry on someone's name from our ancestor.
Mm-hmm. So Go We Knit, was that was the name that you were given? Putting things in place. Putting things in place. What does that mean?
Putting things in place, but not storing them away or forgetting about them. You just place them. You section them out here, there, wherever they go. That's what that name means.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow. So can you tell us a little bit about your experience in residential school? Just a little bit of what you feel free to discuss, to tell us.
Okay. I remember going to school. I was in kindergarten, and at certain points of the day, they used to make us sleep at school. What they do is they give us a blanket, and they told us to lay down on the floor, and we had to lay there until they told us to get up. To me, it was like, we're supposed to be going to school to learn. And I even asked my mom, I says, why do we have to sleep at school? And she says, what do you mean you're sleeping at school? And she said, I told her, I says, yeah, everybody has to lay on the floor for about an hour. And she says, well, where's the teachers? I says, I don't know. We were just told not to open our eyes and go to sleep. Hey, a child at that age, how can you make a 4-year-old child sleep when they know they're supposed to be at school learning, painting, reading, having fun? We didn't have so much fun. It wasn't fun at all.
Mm,
A
mm,
lot of things that I carry deep inside that I do not let come out. And I think that only basis because I don't want my grandchildren to go through what I went through myself.
mm,
And I myself have a lot of trauma from, like I say, junior kindergarten right until grade 7. I was about 12 in grade 7, and I was just ready to turn 13. And in that time, there was a lot of things that were happening, and we all thought as children, we thought, okay, well, today is our treat day for milk. And they were supposed to be buying the milk in the little containers. What we were getting powdered milk. They tell us, oh, here's your snack for the day. At lunchtime, we all had to have snacks. We thought, cookies or something like that. No, we were eating dog biscuits. They
oh,
were
my.
giving us dog biscuits to eat every day. And I used to hide mine. I wouldn't eat it because it's not, I didn't like the taste of it.
Mm,
And they were getting them by the barrels.
mm,
And another thing that was done was we go to school. I was in grade 3, 4, maybe roundabout. They come in and they had a dentist come in. We all had to go into the dentist room. And it was like a little office space. We were all sent in there and they check our mouth, tell us open our mouths. So we do. And then all says, oh, well, you need a tooth pulled. And I thought, okay, well, my teeth aren't loose. Why are they going to pull it? So what they do is they had one person on this side, one person on this side, and one person in front of you. And he was taking and he was pulling our teeth. No numbing, no freezing, no nothing.
mhm,
So what they do is they pull our teeth. They were getting paid so much money per tooth of each child. So I go home and I tell my mom, I says, Mom, they pulled my tooth today. And she says to me, she says, why are they pulling your teeth? There's nothing wrong with your teeth. They weren't loose. She says, were they loose? I says, no, Mom, they weren't loose. And so that was one thing. And then we also got every day, we used to get these little red vitamins, they would call them. You have to take these vitamins. I have not a clue what was in those vitamins and why we had to take them. And another thing that we had to go through was the needles. We were getting needles. We don't know what they were. They never told our parents that we were getting these needles. Right to this day, I don't know what was in those needles. What else was there?
mm,
The discipline when I got in the higher grades, like grade 6. And then that's when they used to get the belt. And it was belt, I'd say about maybe 2 feet long. It was black and it was about an inch thick. And that's what they used to use on us when we get in trouble at school. We'd stand in front of the class and the principal or vice principal, he'd come and he would whip us. He'd tell us, put our hand. He'd put out our hand and he'd hold it and he'd hit us 3 times. If we cried, he'd give up. He'd stop. But if you didn't cry, he did it more until you did cry. Many a times I seen students standing in the corners because they were, and he had to wear this dunce hat. It was a pointy hat. He had to wear a dunce hat, they called it. Because you're the dunce of the day. You're being bad. So they'd send us in a corner. Many times I seen a lot of children that had wet themselves because they couldn't go to the bathroom.
mhm,
They were told to stay in that corner until I tell you to get out of that corner. Like, and to me, I'd sit there and I'd cry. I'd cry for them. And then other ones would be laughing. I say to them, I turn, I look at them, what do you think is so funny about that? They're wetting themselves. They're embarrassed. You wouldn't like it if it happened to you. And that's what, and even then on a school bus, even going to the school, it was hard. I used to get my hair pulled. My mom used to put my hair in ponytails. And the girl behind me, she'd grab my ponytails and she'd go like this with them. My head be going back and forth, back and forth. She'd steal my lunch. She'd trip
Oh.
me on a bus. She'd hold me past my bus stop.
Mhm.
And it wasn't just the teachers, it wasn't just the school, it was also the children that were very, I don't even know the word to say for it. They were treating us like animals, I guess you'd say.
Mm.
They, there
So at
were,
this
they were,
point, at this point you
yeah,
was living at home, right?
yes, I was
And
still living at
going,
home.
yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
but your parents must have been really
Yeah.
upset by it all. Did you
Oh,
tell
well,
them?
there was a lot of things that were untold. There was a
Mm.
lot of things that were untold. And like, we were too scared to tell our parents at that point in time because our way of life where we were when we were little was you respect, you listen to your elders. Okay, in my heart, okay, my mom and dad always told me, listen to your elders. So that's what I did. I took it upon myself. They know what they're doing. I have to listen to them. Little did I know that they were all just tormenting us, making us do things unspeakable, like some things that I seen on a playground. It was a lot of sexual things that went on the playground were unsupervised.
Mm.
Or they'd come up and they'd wonder, how come you're crying? What happened to you? You're too embarrassed or you're in trauma, you're in shock. You don't know what to tell them. You don't know if they're going to believe you or not. And they'd walk away.
Mm.
Many
Mm.
times I've seen what I've seen, and I try to bring it to the teacher's attention. Like they're doing something to this girl over here. She needs help. And the teacher, oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And they just let it slide. They wouldn't do nothing about it.
Mm.
And I tried my best to help who I could, and then me, myself, I was a part of that as well. And I had this one friend that he always took care of me. He was the biggest boy at school. I went to him and he was my friend. He was my cousin, but he was my friend as well. And he was my protector at that point in time,
Mm.
in which I greatly appreciated everything he had done for me, rest his soul. But and it's awful when you have to go to school and you have to do what you're told, knowing it's wrong. But at our age, we didn't know no better. We were just told what to do, when to do it, how to do it, everything.
Mm.
And to me, like I say, when I was going to school, I hated school because the way I got treated, not only at school, but on the buses. On some points in time, I'd be, I'd be, I'd be, hang on a minute. I'd be so traumatized that I didn't even want to go on a bus.
Yeah.
My mom, I used to go outside and she'd say, the bus is coming over the hill. You get ready, get to the stop, in front of the driveway there. And I'd go out the door and I'd run around the house because I didn't want to get on that bus because I knew how I was treated on that bus.
Mm.
So what I did is I ran around the house. My mom was chasing behind me with a broom.
Mm.
And then another time, my dad, he was just waiting to get home get to work. He was going to work. He had steel boots on, steel toe boots, I guess you call them.
Mm.
I did the same thing to him, but he caught me. He caught me and he kicked me. He wanted to kick me in the ass. I went to put my hand behind my butt, and he broke my thumb because he kicked me so hard.
Oh.
So it wasn't
Mm.
just at
Mm.
school from the teachers or the students, it was also at home where it wasn't a stable home. So
Mm. Mm.
it's been a really, really hard goal for me
Right. Right.
and then that's when I stayed at home. I didn't go to school. And then the band office on reserve, they had their tune officers. And since I wasn't going to school and I missed so much, I was taken from the reserve. I was placed into Elderton. And that's where it all began for the 60s Scoop, is when I got placed
Mhm.
in their care from the reserve.
Mhm.
The reserve chiefs knew, the counselors knew, they knew that I was going into the Children's Aid Society for London. And then, like I say, that's when the 60 Scoop started
Mhm,
for me.
mhm. So you were going into the Children's Aid because
Of truancy. That's,
oh, right.
that's
Yes,
why I was put
right,
in there, was for truancy.
right.
And the thing that I find so ironic about that is you go to school as a child, you earn your credits, you have fun, a normal person, a normal child, and you get your credits for high school. Through all of my schooling, even from grade 8 all the way up to I went to grade 11, but I walked out with 3.5 credits.
Mm.
Reason being is because I was never in a stable place.
Oh.
For long enough to get my grades evaluated, like got credits, got credits. I didn't have that. So what I did is I went back to school when my children were starting to graduate. And I thought to myself, well, I don't have my grade 12. Who am I to tell my children to grade a grade 12? I didn't want to look like I was a hypocrite by telling them to get their grade 12 when I didn't even have mine. So what I did is I took this 1 year. It took me 1 year to get my grade 9, 10, 11, and 12. I went to school. I graduated with my son the same year. And it was hard. It was hard. It was a hard year, but I did it. And
Yeah,
I'm proud that I did it. You know, and
amazing.
then I could then say to my children, you have to get your grade 12. If I can do it, you can do it.
That's right. That's
And
right.
they all achieved that. That made my heart feel so happy. I was so happy
Mhm,
that I was able to do it myself, but not just myself. I pushed my
Right.
children to do it too.
Right, right. So was the where you were put in the 60 Scoop, was that still in London or was that somewhere else?
Well, the first placement I went to, it was in Ilderton. Ilderton, it's other side of St. Thomas between here and London. Well, anyways, I was put in there and it was like a wooded area. And when I was in there, it was all for girls. There was about maybe 4 or 5 of us girls that were in there.
Mm,
And the people that ran that, the receiving home, they had 2 big German shepherds. Always had them in a basement. We could never go in that basement because they were really mean dogs. They were guard dogs.
mm,
And they were there. What they would do is when the girls would go upstairs to bed at night, they'd bring the dogs up from the basement. And they had the lower level of the house. And then they would have those dogs out. Being so mean as they were, that was how they would keep the girls upstairs. Because if you were to come downstairs, that dog is going to attack you. And that's what we were always told. You cannot leave that upstairs.
mm.
And that's what we did. They'd lock every room of the girls' rooms. They'd lock them at night. And I thought to myself, one night I asked one of the girls, and I says, why are they locking the room when they know that we're not going to go down there if those dogs are going to attack us? And then she told me, she says, they've always locked those rooms. I says, well, how do you have to go to the bathroom during the night? She says, you can't. She says, there's a pot in a corner over there. You have to go and make sure that you empty it because it's your responsibility.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
I thought that wasn't right. Like, to lock us in our room and have a potty in a corner for us.
Mhm.
And what happens if there was a fire? What happens
Right.
with all that? Our safety. Where's our safety? We didn't have none.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
then from there, I went to a group home. I went there for a little over a year. I was there. And then from there, I went to, it was a very strict group home. It was all girls, the first group home I went. And they were pretty rough. You had to more or less fend for yourself. You had to protect yourself. You had to defend yourself because they were very, very awful girls to live with. A couple of them were older than me, and me being so tiny when I was little, I was only like maybe 95 pounds, if that. And they used to always taunt me, make me cry. And I just hated it there. And I fell into a deep depression. At that time, I didn't know what was called depression. But I felt like, where do I fit? I'm not with my family. What did I do wrong? And then I go into this receiving home. They treat us like dirt. And then I get into this group home where we have to literally fend for ourselves. Yeah, they were there, but they never took care of us. They were like a person that's there as a shadow, watch you. And then from there, I went to Strathroy into a foster home. And I was in that foster home for about 3 years. Yeah, roughly maybe about 3 years. And then from there, it was just as bad. I had my jaw broken in the foster home. The lady, I won't disclose her name, but the lady, she had hit me with a table lamp, one of the great big porcelain heavy ones. She got mad at me. I was supposed to do something and I refused to do what she wanted me to do. So I was sitting on a couch. So she grabs this lamp and she throws it in my face. I ended up with a broken jaw. Then I had visits to go home. And she says, well, we can't have you going home like that. We have to tell your parents that you were bad. So you got grounded. You got all your privileges taken away. That wasn't the truth.
Mm.
They just didn't want me to tell my parents what happened.
Mm.
And so that's what happened is I lost all my phone calls. I couldn't even have phone calls coming from my parents. I couldn't go home
Oh.
until I was healed. And
Mm.
and then after that, they took me out of that foster home and they put me in another group home. It was a co-ed with boys and girls. And that one where I went, that had to be the worst one that I ever went through. It was, you hear stories about children washing floors with toothbrush. That's not a myth. That's not a lie. I did it.
Oh.
And we had nights where we had to cook, everyone. We had chores to do. If our chores weren't up to their standards, we had to do it all over again. We had to do the rec rooms. We had to do the bathrooms. There was 2 bathrooms upstairs. There was about 8 of us, co-ed boys and girls. And the boys had a bathroom and the girls had a bathroom. And our duties were to clean the bathrooms from top to bottom, scrub the floors on your hands and knees, wipe everything down with bleach water. That's how we had to do it. They'd come in and we'd have to stand at the door and they'd come in, they'd take a look around. Oh, well, you didn't do this right. You got to do it all over again. I says, well, why do I have to do it all over again? Why can't I just do that little portion? She says, no, you have to do it all over. And so they stood there, they watched you do it until it was to their standards.
Right.
They locked us in our rooms at night there also. There was 3 girls in my room that I had. There was 2 rooms for the girls and 2 rooms for the boys. There was at least 2 to 3 in each room. And like I say, the bathrooms, they had 4 stalls, 2 sinks. And we had to clean all that all the time. And that's not including the rec room we had to clean up. That's not including the dining room where everybody had to eat in. We had chores. We literally we were like little robots. They had everything marked on the schedule. Who does what on what day? And so it was hard. It was hard to live like that. And then after that, I got taken out of there and then I got shipped back into Strathroy to the same placement that I was at where the woman had broken my jaw.
Oh.
I withdrew from everyone. I didn't talk to no one. I lost trust in everyone. I sheltered myself away. You might as well say that I would turn into a mute. I would not communicate. because that's how much I held inside. Like everything that I was doing, it seemed to be doing wrong.
Mm.
In my eyes, I was doing everything wrong. I pray and I just want to go home. I just want to go home. You know,
Mm.
that lasted right until I was 18 when I finally out aged the where they classify it as ward. Crown ward is till you're 18. I had gotten pregnant at that point in time. I lost my son the same month that I came out of Children's Aid Society in
Mm.
March of 81.
Mm.
Same month I lost my son.
Wow. Mm.
So yes, there is a lot that I hold, and I don't like to disclose a lot.
Mhm. Mhm.
And me, myself, I took it upon myself. I had 3 nervous breakdowns. And my children were pretty small. My youngest was only about a year old. She's 31 now. So that's like 30 years ago. And I had nervous breakdown after nervous breakdown. And finally, I just couldn't handle it no more. And
Mm.
my doctor at the time was Dr. Carlisle. Dr. Carlisle, he took me and my family in like one of his own. I was like a daughter to him, and he was like my dad. And he cared for my children just as like he would his own grandchildren. And he spoke highly of them and how mannered they were, and telling me, Kim, you've done a good job with your children.
Mm.
And that felt really good to hear that. And he did a lot with my children. And like I say, he was the one that helped me build back to who I was. And then that's when I finally realized I got to do something. My head isn't right. Something's wrong upstairs. So I thought to myself after my mom passed away, 2003, and then I thought, there's something major wrong with me the way I think. So I thought, well, I'm going to get help for myself. I told my husband at the time, I says, there's something wrong. I'm thinking of going to get myself some help. I'm going to go see a psychiatrist. And he says, why? Do you think you're crazy? I says, no, I don't think I'm crazy. It's just that there's something wrong with my way of thinking. It it tells me one thing, and then I'm reliving my past. And then it took me 10 years,
Mm.
10 years to see the doctor psychiatrist that I had, Dr. Goldman. And he knew everything right down to the gory details because I was so open. And he was the one that told me, Kim, it's not you. It's not that way of you thinking. It's what was instilled as when you were a child growing up. Because you were a child, you didn't know no better. You were only doing what you were told to do. And like I say, and even at my home life, my parents, my dad was an alcoholic. He was in residential school. He was in Brantford at the Much Hole. And he would tell me stories. When I got in my 20s, he'd tell me, he'd be drinking. He says, Kim, I have something to talk to you about. I said, okay, what is it, Dad? And I get all happy. And he's sitting there and he starts crying. And then I says, Dad, why are you crying? And then he'd tell me about what happened to him when he was in the Mush Hole in Brantford residential school. And then while he was there was so much abuse, sexually abuse to the children. And he even told me what was going on, the older boys, what they were supposed to do to the younger boys. He told me about that. Yes, there are graves out there. He told me he had to dig grave for a child.
Mm.
So there are actually graves
Mhm.
with children's bones at the Mush Hole in Brantford. If they look on the ground, they will find some. I'm
Oh.
guaranteed because my dad told me he was the one that had to dig the grave.
Mm.
And then, as he was 16 when he ran away from there. The reason he ran away is because the person that was always sexually molesting them, my dad was so fed up. What he did is the elevator chute wasn't in service. So my dad, he seen as he walked by the elevator door, my dad ran so fast and just pushed him. And down he went. And that's why my dad ran away
Mm.
of what he done. And then after that, he ran to his grandmother's. And then that's when After that, he went to his grandmother's and she took care of him. And then he went to the army. He joined the army after that. And then after the army, he sat and he told me a lot of things that he had seen during the army as well. So my dad, I can understand now as an adult, I understand what he went through and why he was an alcoholic.
Mm.
It's because he covered up all his pain with the alcohol.
Mhm.
He didn't know how to handle it. So that's his pain was in alcohol. My mom, she was raised by my grandfather. Her mom passed away when she was 5. So my mom didn't really have that mother figure in her life. Me growing up, I didn't have that mother figure in life. Not once. And when I was placed from here to there and everywhere, I never heard the words, I love you. I never ever heard that. I never heard it from my own mom, my own dad. And then I thought later in life, when I have children, I want to make sure my children hear me saying, I love you. It doesn't matter if I'm on a text, on a phone, or in person, but it's always, I love you.
Mhm.
Because to
Mhm.
me, you never know when that I love you is going to be the last.
Yeah, yeah. Mm. So while you were in the 60s Scoop and your parents were at home, was there anybody working with them, trying to heal them?
No,
They were just
nope.
left to fend for themselves.
They were just left. My
Mm.
other siblings, my sister, she was never apprehended with a 60 scoop. My younger brother, he wasn't apprehended. My brother, my older brother, yes, he was taken into the 60 scoop, but he only was in there for I'd say 6 to 8 months.
Mhm.
And then he turned age because they
Mm.
only had him for till he was 16.
Mm.
So that he wasn't in there very long. I was in there the longest.
Mm.
They all went to the day school as well. But I can't tell their story.
No,
Right.
no,
It's not my
no,
story to
no, that's right. So while you were there, did you have any education? Did you go to school when you were in the 60s Scoop?
I did go to school, yes. I was placed in several different schools. I was in Thames. Went to high school at Beale, Thames, Saunders. Like I had different, and even when I was in Strathroy, I went to 2 different schools, like Prince Andrew, I believe it was called, and the high school, Strathroy District Institute. So I went there, but like I say, I didn't get enough time in one spot to get credits. And
Mhm.
even I have some reports that I had gotten from Children's Aid in London before I had to apply for the 60 Scoop lawsuit. So I got my forms on me from the Children's Aid, but there's a lot that's missing. There's a lot that's blacked out. It's unlegible. You can't read. So where's the rest of my file? Like, that's not all. I got a 51-page um thing sent to me, and there's a lot missing. It doesn't talk about the abortion that they made me have.
Mm. Mm.
And there's several, like when she broke my jaw. Where's that? It wasn't in the report
Mhm.
back to me.
Mhm. Mhm.
But there was stated when I was 7 years old, I was already seeing a psychiatrist at 7.
Mm.
So I don't even know what that was. I can't remember, but it's
Mm.
in my file.
Did they
And
take your baby away from you?
no,
No.
when the first one I was aborted because I was still in our society, and a judge that ordered the abortion, he turned and he looked at me. He says, the only reason we're giving you an abortion is because we don't want to have to feed another wall.
Mm.
Like
Mm.
how could you?
Mm.
And so I had no say. I couldn't run to my parents because back then, when you're in Children's Aid Society, you are owned by them. You go by their rules, by their regulations, what they say.
Mm.
And I still remember one court day we went to, and I think they were shipping me back to Strathroy. And the judge, after he puts down his sentence and he looks at me. He says, "Do you have anything to say?" I says, "Yes, I do." I stood up and I told him, I says, "No matter how far you put me or where you send me, I will always go home."
Mm.
That was in the report.
Mm.
Like I say, there's a lot of things that was in that report that I didn't even know was in there until I read it. I broke down just reading it myself, and that was happening to me
Mhm.
as a child. But now as an adult, I look back on it and I think to myself, that was so wrong. How could one person like that treat another so inhumane?
Mm. Mm.
There was a lot of roughness, a lot of roughness. There was slaps, there was hits, there was stretch, like searches, your room searched, your body searched.
Mm.
You allow us to go buy our clothes. We had to have every cent. Say our clothes, say we get a $50 for clothes. Say we had $2.41 left. We had to have the exact change or they take it away from us for the next round. So
Mm.
the next month we wouldn't get nothing.
Mm. Mm.
We made sure that we came back with the right amount of change. We had to buy our own hygiene products, right down to our own toilet paper. They wouldn't provide that. We
Oh,
had to
wow.
house.
Wow.
And they
So, go, sorry.
and they turn around and tell us that they're taking care of children in their society with children's aid. No, they're not. No, they're not.
Mm. Mm.
I don't know what it's like nowadays, but back then it was awful. It was awful. And a lot of kids that I went to school with, and I go back to the reserve, I visit with my cousins, and they says, "Where were you for so long?" I says, "Oh, I was in London, Strathroy, Ilderton."
Mm.
And he says, "How was it?" And the only thing I could say, it was awful. I would
Yeah.
not wish that on anyone to go through
Mm.
that, what
No,
I had to go through.
no,
I can't believe, I still can't believe that I've made it to
right.
this far, to this
And
day. There's many a
and
time.
you've done well. And you've done well. So, Kim, we've got about 7 minutes or something. I wonder if you could read that last poem that you wrote. The
The
others,
last,
I think we can send to people if you'd like. But
the
if you'd
moving,
like to,
the moving forward.
yeah,
Okay.
and then we can move into questions, and you can, I'm sure you want to expand on
Yes,
things. Yeah, that would be
yes.
great.
But that pretty much covers
Mm,
to what it was like in the 60s Scoop.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I had written a little thing I had sent to Joy. It's called Moving Forward. If I learned anything in my life, it's that sometimes the darkest times can bring us to the brightest places, that our most painful struggles can grant us the most necessary growth, that what seemed like a curse in the moment can actually be a blessing. And no matter how bad things seem, there is always hope. No matter how powerless we feel or how horrible things seem, we cannot give up. We have to keep going, even when it's scary, even when all our strength has gone. We have to keep moving forward. Whatever we're battling in the moment, it will pass and we'll make it through. We've made it this far, we can make it through whatever comes next.
Mm, mm.
That was one that I had written.
Yeah, you got 3 others, I know.
Yes.
But we'll make sure that people hear those, see
Yes,
those.
yes,
But
yes.
at this point, I thank you so much for your really moving presentation
Thank you.
and the discussion. I feel like we've had a bit of a discussion, but
Yes,
your trust in your creator and in
yes.
people,
Oh,
in
yes,
spite of everything, is inspiring.
yes, yes,
So you've been determined, and you give your family a
yes.
chance in life, and
Oh, yes.
it's all to you.
And all what I'm doing is I'm trying to pass that all to my grandchildren as well, so they
Mm.
know. They
Right.
know how to do
Oh,
some of
I
the
know one more, because you
what?
mentioned the ribbon shirts and
Yes,
dresses.
yes.
Now, what is the significance of the ribbon dresses and shirts?
The women when they go into the longhouse, they don't wear jeans, they don't wear shorts, they don't show their bare legs. They have to have a full length skirt from your waist to your ankles. That's in respect because we are women. And the men, they wear their shirts for honor of the spirit world. And that is also with the skirts as well. And like I say, I'm going to get some material and I'm making my granddaughters and grandsons shirts and skirts.
to show your love for them. I'm just going to suggest that we have a moment of quiet and then people can think of some questions, and then Melanie will take people through the Q&A.
Est-ce qu'on peut poser une question, là?
So, Kim, thank you very much for sharing this experience of that you've endured, and sharing with us your stories, very, very deep and dark, scary stories, which when I was reflecting, it reminded me of a song I learned through IFC in India, about walking a mile in another man's moccasins. And I want to know, we're going to go through a Q&A, and I'd invite everybody to share either comments or questions you might have for Kim, but I thought I'd ask, I have two. One is a serious question, but also another question that's a bit more playful. And then we can start opening up the floor. Maybe I'll just ask one question to start, so not to hog the mic. You mentioned that a lot of stories go untold, that
Yes.
you experience many of your stories going untold. And my question for you is, I guess, then a two-part question. And the first is, if you had the opportunity to sit down with either three people, three institutions, three groups, who would those people be and why? And how do you envision that transfer of knowledge being very important? And you know what, I have to ask my other question. I'm sorry, I know I'm supposed to facilitate it, but the second question is if you were in charge of a curriculum for future generations, for youth, for children, what would that look like?
Okay, back to your first question. I have to answer. I'd like to be a person that goes into the 60s Scoop Children's Aid Societies and be a role model, a speaker of what it was like and what has to be changed. Because there's a lot that I've seen that went on behind closed doors that I know happened. Is it still happening today? I sure hope not. But that's what I'd like to acknowledge to the people that are in charge. What is going on with these places now? Is there any reason why there's things that aren't told? Because a lot of my things weren't told. And then referring to your second one, it would be, if I had to be I think I'd be like a counselor, somebody to talk about with children that are going through something, whether it be at home, whether it be at school, or whether it be where their placement was, like a receiving home, a group home, foster homes. I'd like to try to organize something like that, someone to talk to, because when I was going through it, there was no one. There was no one I could talk to. I had to hold it all in. And me, I'm probably just a one of how many thousands of others. You know, but that's what I would like to see, is someone to talk to as a person, for them to let out their story to them.
Thank you, Kim. I'm gonna open up the floor for folks who would like to share comments or questions. I see Maddie Emily has her hand up, so I'll pass the baton to you if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Ouais. Je vais parler en français.
So for the English speakers, please go to the interpretation button at the bottom and you can click on English. And Elizabeth will be translating what Marie-Emily says into English. Go ahead, Marie-Emily.
Oui, Kim, thanks a lot. Moi, j'ai été aussi adoptée dans la rafle des années 60 au Québec. Mais j'ai de la difficulté à comprendre. Moi, j'ai été adoptée, je suis restée toujours dans la même famille. J'ai vécu les conditions très difficiles aussi. Mais je ne comprends pas pourquoi, toi, Kim, tu étais toujours en relation avec tes parents. Parce que moi, dans ma tête, la rafle, on était séparés de nos parents. Moi, je n'ai jamais revu mes parents. Hein. Alors, comment ça se fait, toi, tu voyais tes parents? Thank you. Jamais je te m'étonne.
Okay, the reason why I got to go home and see my parents when I was in the 60s Scoop, I was only taken away for truancy. I was only taken through the summer, the school year. I get home 2 weeks out of the summer and then I have to go back. So really, no, I wasn't allowed to live at home. I was only there to visit for summer. I was there for 2 or 3 days for Christmas. And then I was right back to my foster home again. And that was when I was in a 60 Scoop.
Thank you, Kim. Mariella, you have a question or a comment?
Thank you. Thank you, Kim. It seems to me it takes a lot of courage to be willing to tell this story. There was a lot of pain in your life, in your childhood, as you grew older. So can you say something about why you chose to come forth tonight and be so open and share about such a difficult time in your life?
Okay, well, I'd have to say on that note, I'd have to respond by, it was very difficult when I was younger, say when I was about 18 till I was about 30. I was very sheltered. I was a very secluded person. And then when, like I say, once I had that nervous breakdown several times, and then I thought, well, I need myself some help. So like I said, I went to see my psychiatrist for 10 years. From 2003 to 2013, I seen him regular. It was either, at first he wanted to admit me into the psychiatric part. I says, no, I have a family. I can't leave my family. I says, I have too much responsibility with my children. And he says, okay, then we'll make a deal. I says, what's that? He told me, he says, if you come every day and see me, then you can stay at home with your children. But you still have to come and see me for the afternoons. So our appointments were from 1 o'clock till 3 o'clock. I used to take the van out there. They had a community van that went out to the psychiatric hospital where I was attending for my counseling. And then during the summer this year, I had a appointment with my lawyer, and it was due to the residential school that I had to go through. And he walked me through and he talked with me. Our meeting was only supposed to be for an hour long. It lasted 3 hours. And yes, I cried. I let everything out. And I don't know, to me, it was just this voice on the phone was reassuring, Kim, you are doing the right thing. Kim, you are healing. This is not all your fault, how you're thinking. It's what was done to you as a child, not knowing. And so I finally got to the point where I can talk about this now. It doesn't hurt no more. It doesn't hurt me to talk about it. It's like just talking with somebody on the street. A lot of people, they talk to me and they think, oh, you're such a nice person and you have this aura about you. You know, you're so kind and loving. And then I thought to myself, if only they knew what I had to endure to get to this point in my life. All the obstacles of horrific, traumatized events that happened to me. And yet I can still stand and I can tell my side, my story without breaking down. Before, I couldn't even talk about it. I couldn't. I'd break down. I'd stutter my words. I wouldn't even know how to put them in sentences. I myself, I find that I've come a long, long way compared to even 3 years ago. And like I say, I do my healing, I do my praying, I thank the Creator for everything that I have. I just enjoy being here, being able to be with my family, my children, my grandchildren, the loved ones that I carry in my heart. And that's what helps me make it through. From that traumatic point of my life, I can actually set it free now. And I can be okay with myself.
Mhm. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kim. We have a question that was sent by Ron Lawler. He was in Australia. He had to disconnect, but I'd love to ask the question on his behalf, and we'll share with him the recording. So he says, "Thanks so much, Kim, for your open sharing of such painful experiences. We are privileged to hear it. There are so many echoes of stories for Australian First Nations peoples who are still scooped up in child removal and into the justice system in increasing numbers." And he puts justice in quotations. "I wonder what the ongoing challenges are for your people to emerge from this oppressive space." And he apologizes as he had to leave. He said, "I'm sorry."
Aw. Yes, that's very, very good. Like I say, I don't know what the system's like nowadays. You know, we did have an encounter with my own daughter several years ago. She was going down the wrong road. Her children were almost apprehended by the Children's Aid Society in St. Thomas, where we live. And by the time I got there, they were just removing the children. And I stepped in. I said, "No, you're not taking them. You're not taking my grandbabies to be put in the place where I had already went." I said, "I'm not going to let this." So I took all 4 of my grandchildren with me and I came home. I looked after them here. And then a week later, they were here with me for a week. And then Children's Aid finally came to the house and we did a home visit. And they asked me, "Okay, Kim, if you don't want the children to go in our custody, what are you recommending we do?" I said, "Is there any way that I could actually be at their house in their environment and at the same time helping my daughter to overcome what battle she's battling herself?" I said, I could stay there with her. I was with her for 6 months and then they closed her case. And that was the first that they ever did that. And we were the very first family that I worked with. And I don't know if they're commencing on that, but to me, it was a better than to see her lose her children. My niece, she had lost 4 children to Children's Aid. She went down that dark road. There was no one to help her. She didn't want my help. I couldn't save her. She ended up committing suicide. Now her children live out without a mother. And I didn't want that to happen to my daughter. And that's why I recommend it. I'll willingly go live at her house for you not to take them. And they agreed. And I was very, very thankful. I stayed with her, like I say, 6 months. 6 months, and she was getting counseling. She bettered herself. And right to this day, she still comes to me for mother advice. I try my best to give her what advice I can on what should be done rightly. And I'm just thankful that at least I got to save my grandchildren from going through what I went through.
This is very my real name is John, but I go by Jack. So back in 1998, my wife and I and Dr. Jim Carlisle went with Kim and her daughter Tiffany to William Commander's weekend retreat up on north of at the reserve, that renowned reserve that William Commander came from up north of Ottawa. We had a weekend together. Dr. Jim introduced us to you. It's good to see you again.
Yes.
I'm now 90 years old. That's 1998 is how many? That's quite a few years ago.
Oh,
So haven't seen you since.
aw.
But you're that big smile now you got in your face. That's the way I remember you. So life wasn't quite. You've had a tough life, and
Yeah.
some of us have been blessed with better journeys.
Yes.
And I'm so thankful that you have come through this and you're sharing and helping others move on forward. Thanks for that poem.
Aw.
If Tiffany is still around, say hello to her.
Oh, I will for sure.
Yeah, okay, well, all the best. And my wife, Mary Jean, passed away
Oh,
in
no.
June. And so she's gone to join Jim, her brother. And
Right.
anyway, it meant a lot to her, that trip up and to William Commander's Reserve, where you had those morning retreats and smudging. And anyway, it was a great time. We attended.
I still have the pictures from there too.
So thanks for coming on and sharing with us. Bye.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, bye.
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 And I think we'll just take a moment to allow Elizabeth to type in her question, because she didn't get to ask her question before and she was interpreting. So, no. Oh.
Did you have a second question, Melanie? So when I see that Joy has one.
Joy has a question, so let's pass it over to Joy for now.
Okay, just having been away from the rest of your family as you were growing up, you must have lost contact in a certain way. So how did you get, because it sounds like you're together again, and how did you manage that? How did you come together after it all? Were you able to share stories between yourselves and what's happened?
That's kind of a difficult question to answer, because I lost my younger brother in 99. And I lost my older brother in 2000. And I'm looking after my sister right now. She's in a nursing home, so I'm looking after her as well. I lost both my parents, one in my mom in 2003, my dad in 2005. And I also lost a set of twins that my niece had. So in the long run, I really didn't get to know my brothers and my sister as much as I wanted to. I hear stories about children that grew up with their siblings and they had so much fun. I didn't have that, and then when it was our turn to bond as siblings, it was more like we were all in our teens and everybody kind of just went their separate ways. Like they went out with who they were matched with, their partner or whatever. And there was no real close communication. So like I say, I wish I got to know my brothers more than what I have. And like I say, my sister, I'm taking care of her. She had a stroke and she lost all her mobility and she can't talk, she can't walk. So I go visit her very often. I spend a lot of time with my sister right now. She's only 4 years older than I am. I'm 60, so she's turning 64. So that's the only one I have left. and I try to make a good bond with her for what we have left with her.
Mm. So I'd like to share what Elizabeth was wanting to speak earlier. She expresses the experience of your father, Kim, is exactly like the story of my father-in-law. In 1954, at the age of 16, they beat up a priest who had raped Native girls. And they ran away, the 3 Native boys, and joined the Korean War.
Yeah.
Returned wounded in souls and bodies and became alcoholics.
Yeah, that's exactly how it happened with my dad. And like I say, when I was growing up with my father, him being an alcoholic, and just the outrage that he had, that he held back, it was all rage when it would come out. And like I say, I grew up with not the best family life, you would say. There was a lot of traumatic events that happened there at home as well. I remember one time that things were going so bad in the house, and I ended up sleeping under the bed, a bunk bed. We had bunk beds, and I put my little brother against the wall. And we already had pillows and blankets under there. So I just put my brother against the wall, and I laid in front of him. In the opening from under the bed, I got all the dirty clothes, and I piled them in front of us. I told my brother, shh, don't say a word or they'll find us. That was me protecting him from seeing what I saw. I didn't want my little brother to see that. So I more or less sheltered him. I cared for him to the point of we were eating mustard sandwich, mustard and bread, ketchup and bread, mayonnaise and bread. That was our own survival. My brother, he knew how to get a soup. We ate a lot of soup and bread. That's all we lived on, a lot. I can't remember a big happy family meal sitting down with my family. I don't remember none of that. Christmas time, it's supposed to be such a joyous time for everyone, not us. We grew up with a tree outside the door and all our presents on the ground outside. And that's not what Christmas is all about. Christmas is supposed to be there for loving, caring, taking everybody together, loving. We didn't have that. I didn't grow up like that. And like I say, people come to me and they say, Kim, you're such a strong person. How can you hold yourself together like this? You know, I tell them because I prayed to my creator. My creator is the one that helps me go through this. It's just me.
So I know we're a bit over time for our Q&As, so I apologize to those who have a raised hand, Magdalena and Mangalim and Andrew. But I want to give the appropriate time to Case to share his perspective and what he needs to share for closing. And on behalf of IFC, I just also would like to express thank you for being here and sharing your story with us, Kim. Took an immense amount of courage, and it's been an honor to sit here and listen to your sharing and your stories. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me say my story and let my story out to others that don't know what the 60s is all about.
Can I say just 1 minute, just to share my comment? Kim, I wasn't here to at the beginning for your story, but I heard part of your story. And from that, what I see there is a serenity on your face. You know, and in my heart, I'm feeling that the healing is taking place in you, Kim. And I am rejoicing with you because this is what we are hoping, you know, in every story sharing, we want to see that there is healing. And
Yes.
I rejoice with you. And thank you, Kim, for this talk.
You're very welcome. And thank you. Thank you for having me tonight. I wish we had more time, but
I know. I know. Well, it's always the way,
Yes,
but who knows? Maybe there'll be another chance.
you never know.
Yeah. So now I'd just like to thank you myself, but also I'm going to hand it over to Case to have a word and to conclude.
Okay.
Hello, Kim.
Hello.
Thank you for the deep sharing. Lots of emotions going out
Mhm.
in
Oh,
you.
yes.
I have shared this before, but I felt I should share it again. Is I am experiencing almost 2 times of colonial experiences. I come from post-colonial free India,
Mhm.
which still carries a lot of colonial systems in the way it operates and in how religious entities try to suppress the minorities. So that's one part of my experience. After coming to Canada, I have been actively participating in a lot of the circle sessions, and it has given me a completely new insight to the experiences of not just not just older people but also young people, because I
Yes.
know that a lot of the 60s Scoop survivors or the last generation is my age almost, and
Yeah.
I can relate to some of their struggles. um so I sort of was thinking about this idea that or this thought behind your name of putting things into place,
Mhm.
and it sort of struck me that this throughout your life you have been moved from one place to another and moved from one place to another, and
Yes.
I sort of thought about this, and I was like, um that for having stability or for having any sort of dignity, what is home for anybody of us? What is our place? Where should we be placed? uh, and so I really appreciate that you have been able to figure that whole experience out, and you have lived through that multi generations of trauma.
Yeah.
uh, and on behalf of IFC Canada and Initiatives of Canada board, I'd like to thank you for being part of this initiative and for your amazing sharing, uh, which has essentially left me with lots of things to reflect on and think about. And thank you so much for this session. I'll pass it on to Joy from here. Joy, to you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Case. And I think you wanted to mention that if people wanted to contribute, there's a link
Yeah.
on the website or in the
Yeah.
chat maybe.
Yeah, I think Mariella has just, if anybody likes to, this is essentially a volunteer-driven initiative, but we do have, a few expenses like hosting on Zoom and a few other things that go into planning of these sessions. So if anybody would like to, contribute, the links are both the English and French links have been shared in the chat. Please feel free to contribute whatever is possible from you. Thank you so much.
Yes, good. So so now we're coming to the end, and thank you to everybody for participating. And I just want to mention that this is the last circle for 2022, but we're still looking forward to 2023. And perhaps in January, we will it'll be a similar format, but a different focus. We're looking to the future, an Indigenous worldview perspective. So stay tuned. We'll let everybody know when the next one is. And we will be sending out the recording link in the next few days or week or so. And for that, I just thank you all again, especially Kim. And you're a real role model to your family. But thanks to Case, Mariella, Melanie, and all the team for making this a good event. Thank you.
Thank you for all.
And do you smudge now, Kim?
Yes, I'll be smudging. Yes.
Right. Good. Okay. Well, have a good rest of the week, everybody.
You as well. Thank you all.
Thanks. Bye. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Thank you. Miigwech.